Baghdad appeared calm on Sunday as crews began cleaning up central streets after days of violent protests. Peaceful demonstrations grew increasingly violent as protesters clashed with security forces deployed to disperse them. In addition to those killed, thousands of people were injured.
The number of injured is 6,107 and the number of martyrs, 104. These numbers include security forces, civilians, and protesters.
The government tried to stop the protests by imposing curfews and shutting down the internet. When protesters came out anyway, the security forces used water cannon and opened fire on them. Some protesters responded by throwing rocks at the police and burning tires. They also vandalized government offices in some places. Offices of 2 private news channels were raided by masked men on Saturday in Baghdad, angering the journalists.
After all the assaults and the attempts to close and burn media outlets, the Prime Minister should choose between the state of power or a lawless state. What happened was the act of a lawless state.
Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi issued a list of executive decisions Sunday on providing low-income housing, unemployment benefits, and vocational training. Earlier, he had offered to meet with protesters.
I will go and meet them without weapons and sit with them for hours to listen to their demands. If this will ease the situation, then I am ready to do that and spend the coming days in this sense. In return, we call on halting the protests in Baghdad's street and also in the provinces.
The Prime Minister also said that those killed in the demonstrations, whether protesters or security officers, would be considered martyrs, making their families eligible for state benefits. The head of the parliament promised to fight corruption. The curfews were lifted on Saturday.
It is relatively better now that the curfew has been removed. I hope that decisions made by the head of the parliament and the Prime Minister are applied on the ground, because the Iraqi people are tired of promises and are in despair.
Iraq has some of the world's largest oil reserves, but many of its 40 million people live in poverty. The protests are a challenge to Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi, who took office a year ago with promises to improve the situation. Zlatica, Hoke, VOA News, Washington.